Today, we're tackling something vital and pretty controversial in the U.S. economy, the H-1B visa program. We're doing this deep dive because, well, our sources show this fascinating disconnect. For years, experts, across the board agree the H-1B was broken. Lots of talk about abuse, misallocation. So we're going to unpack those problems everyone seemed to agree on. And then critically analyze why this really shocking reform attempt, this huge, sudden $100,000 fee, was pretty much seen as ineffective right out of the gate by those same experts.
Yeah, and to really get started, you have to grasp the sheer scale here. The H-1B isn't some small niche thing. It's actually America's biggest visa category for workers with specialized skills, people with degrees in really technical fields.
Okay, the biggest category.
And here's the kicker, really foundational to the whole problem. The annual limit, the cap, has been stuck at 85,000 workers since the program first started, way back in 1990.
Wow, since 1990, that's inflexible, especially with tech booming.
Exactly. 30 years, demand for talent explodes in the main supply valve. It just hasn't budged.
But hold on, that 85,000 number? That's just for certain employers, right? The capped ones.
That's right, mostly the for-profit companies. That number gets much bigger because you have these large uncapped employers. Think nonprofit universities, research hospitals. They're totally exempt from that limit.
Oh, okay, so they add quite a few more.
Oh, yeah. They easily expand the total number of H-1B workers coming in by at least 50% every single year. Just for context, back in 2019, data showed over 5,583,000 H-1B holders were living and working right here in the U.S. The huge talent pipeline.
Okay, so let's unpack that scarcity issue then. Static cap, huge demand. Something's got to give. What were the main, widely agreed upon failures that led everyone to say, okay, this needs fixing?
Well, the core issue is just that demand massively outstrips the supply, that 85,000 guy, that shortage, plus how the visas actually get handed out.
Yeah.
That's the structural fault line. See, since the early 2000s, the U.S. has basically used a random lottery to allocate them.
A lottery. Just pure chance for these really high-skilled workers.
Pretty much. And a pure lottery with no real way to prioritize maybe exceptional talent or, crucially, higher wages. It created these two big problems, these incentives for bad behavior.
Okay, what were they?
First, just straight-up abuse. Cases where employers would replace American workers with H-1B holders and, this is key, pay them significantly less than the going rate.
Right, the displacement and underpayment issue.
Exactly. And second, it created system gaming. These big outsourcing firms figured out, hey, we can just flood the lottery. They'd submit tons and tons of applications, often for relatively lower paid jobs, just to maximize their odds because, well, the system didn't care about quality, just volume.
That makes sense why it caused political outrage, Americans losing jobs or being undercut. But stepping back a bit, you mentioned the broader economics. Despite all this gaming and abuse, do economists generally think the H-1B program itself is actually beneficial?
They mostly do, yeah. And this is the really important nuance that often gets lost in the shouting matches. Even with this kind of chaotic, random way of picking winners, and even with those real cases of abuse, the general consensus among economists is that H-1B workers, overall, they boost American productivity. They even tend to raise wages for American workers in the long run by bringing in specialized skills we might be short on.
Okay, that's a critical point. So if the economists generally see a net positive, why does the political debate seem almost entirely focused on those maybe scattered cases of displacement and low wages?
Well, because those cases are real, and they really highlight how the government system for managing this whole thing has failed. The issue isn't usually the talent itself. It's the messy, unstrategic way we pick and oversee who gets the visas. The system needs to be smarter, right? Make sure the visas go to the highest value roles, not just the company that submitted the most lottery tickets.
Okay, so that brings us to the Trump administration's attempt to fix it. Faced with all this, they announced two big changes, sort of suddenly. First, this massive $100,000 fee for new visas, and second, a complex weighting system meant to favor higher-paying jobs.
Yeah, the stated goal was pretty clear. Stop the low-wage abuse, make sure those limited visas go to the most valuable, highest-paid people, and, stop them from displacing American programmers, researchers, engineers.
And the reaction to that fee, I remember it being pretty immediate. Business groups, they were generally on board with needing to modernize, right? But $100,000 per application.
Exactly. It seemed to come out of nowhere. Industry groups were saying, yeah, let's fix the lottery. But that fee amount was just shocking.
A shock to the system.
Totally. It was immediately seen as this really high barrier. And people expected lawsuits right away because, well, it felt arbitrary to many experts, like a big political statement that might not actually fix the underlying structural issues.
Okay, let's really dig into why it wouldn't work. Experts across the spectrum, left, right, center, they immediately said this probably won't fix the problem, even its stated goal. Why wouldn't a $100,000 fee stop the big outsourcing firms?
You have to think about it from their perspective, right? The ones accused of flooding the system with lower paid applications. The White House thinking was, okay, this huge upfront cost will make them only apply for workers they really need.
Like a market signal to reduce noise?
Sort of, yeah. But it kind of falls apart when you look at the return on investment over time. If one of those big companies keeps an H-1B worker for the full 6 years the visa allows,
Okay.
that $100,000 fee gets spread out, amortized. Even for jobs that aren't paying top Silicon Valley dollars, policy experts quickly pointed out, it's still often a worthwhile investment for companies making big profits off that labor.
So for the really big players, it's just another cost of doing business, not really a deterrent.
Pretty much a high cost, maybe, but manageable if the business model relies on it.
And that brings us to what seems like the killer flaw, the huge loophole experts flagged immediately. There was apparently a way for multinational companies to just sidestep the fee entirely. Explain that. How does that work?
Yeah, this is crucial. The loophole is all about where the worker is when the fee gets triggered. That $100,000 fee,
Yeah.
it was only supposed to apply to people applying for an H-1B visa from outside the United States.
Oh. So if the worker is already physically in the U.S., no fee?
Exactly. And big multinational corporations, they are masters at moving people around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
It's relatively easy for them to bring a worker they want into the U.S. first using a completely different type of visa.
Like what kind of visa?
A common one is the L-1 visa, the intra-company transfer visa.
Yeah.
Think of it as a way for companies to move existing employees from their office overseas to their office here in the U.S.
Okay, internal company move.
Right. So the worker comes in on the L-1, they're now physically present in the U.S., then the company files to change their status to transfer them over to an H-1B.
Ah, and because that application is now happening inside the U.S.
Bingo. They completely skip the $100,000 fee meant for external applicants. And this isn't some minor thing. The data consistently shows more than half of all H-1B visas are actually given to people already here in the U.S.
Wow. So the reform was basically targeting the front door, while more than half the people were already coming in through the side door, fee-free.
You got it. It put up this massive wall for people trying to enter directly on an H-1B, but the main channel potentially used for, lower wage placements via domestic transfer. Totally untouched, maybe even incentivized.
And it causes other problems too, right? Collateral damage.
Yeah, significant damage. Think about it. The huge tech giants, the Googles, the Apples, maybe they can afford the fees. It might even help them by knocking out smaller competitors in the lottery.
Right. Fewer applications overall might increase their odds.
Exactly. But who gets hurt? Startups, smaller tech firms, and really importantly, universities and research labs. They rely heavily on global talent, operate on tighter budgets. They'll likely be priced out.
So the fee ends up punishing the innovators, the researchers, while the biggest players just treat it as a new line item.
That was a prediction. Yes, it helps the established giants and hurts the disruptors and the knowledge creators.
Okay, so given this huge loophole and the potential damage, let's pivot. If that shock and awe $100 K fee wasn't the answer, what were the real fixes experts were suggesting? The things that got ignored. What are the more strategic solutions?
Well, the strategic ideas all focus on getting rid of that randomness and actually rewarding value, not just luck or volume. One leading idea is compensation ranking. You see this pushed by various think tanks. Basically, you ditch the lottery entirely. You rank all the applications by the salary offered.
Highest salary offer gets the visa first, then down the list.
Exactly. Assure the visas go only to the highest paid workers for that type of job in that location. It directly attacks that wage suppression problem, because a company trying to lowball wouldn't stand a chance of winning a visa.
Okay, that seems direct. But what about important skills that maybe don't command the absolute top salary? Like, say, a specific type of researcher?
Good point. And for that, experts often talk about a point system, kind of like what Canada or Australia uses.
Right, I've heard of those.
Yeah, it's more holistic. It looks beyond just salary to capture other desirable things, maybe specific advanced degrees, youth, language skills, maybe even ties to the U.S. already. It makes the selection process strategic about getting the talent we actually need.
So moving beyond just salary to a broader definition of value.
Precisely. And there's a third thing, maybe less flashy but really powerful, award more green cards, more pathways to permanent residency.
How does that help with the H-1B issues?
Because if H-1B workers know there's a realistic, efficient way to get a green card, they gain power. They get job mobility. They aren't tied to that one employer who sponsored them.
Ah, so they can leave for a better offer if they're being underpaid or mistreated.
Exactly. It's probably the single best check on an employer's ability to suppress wages or abuse the system. Worker mobility corrects a lot of problems.
And fixing some of this stuff, it needs Congress to act, right? You can't just do it all through regulations. What kind of laws would be needed?
Yeah, a lot of the deeper fixes need legislation. Things like Congress requiring employers to really prove they searched hard for American workers first, or, critically, banning companies from laying off American workers just to replace them with visa holders.
Direct protections for U.S. workers.
Right, and also targeted rules to crack down specifically on the business models of those large outsourcing firms that seem built around, wage arbitrage, paying less than the market rate by using visa holders.
Yeah.
It's worth noting the Biden administration did finalize a rule that allows for somewhat tougher oversight in that area, but bigger changes likely need Congress.
So really, if you tie all these alternatives together,
The big picture goal is just to move away from what is, frankly, random chance, which is kind of insane for what should be our flagship program for bringing in top global talent.
Okay, so let's try and summarize this for you, the listener. We look at this huge, vital visa program, the H-1B. Everyone agrees it has serious flaws, way more demand than supply, not enough oversight, and a random lottery system that allows for abuse in gaming. Then came this dramatic reform attempt, the $100,000 fee, a real shocker. But experts immediately said, nope, probably won't work, mainly because of this massive loophole.
Yeah, the loophole where the fee only hit people applying from outside the U.S., but multinational companies could just bring people in using other visas like the L1.
And then switch them to H-1B status once they were inside the country, completely dodging the fee.
Right, and remember, more than half of H-1Bs actually go to people already here.
Which really leaves us with this final thought for you to consider. If you're trying to fix a system where the main complaints are about domestic issues, wage suppression, American workers being displaced here, does it make sense to focus your biggest reform effort on a massive barrier for people trying to get in from outside the country?
Especially when, as we said, over half the visas end up going to people who are already here anyway. It really makes you question if the policy was aimed at the core problem, or maybe, just maybe, they're making a big visible statement.
Something to definitely mull over next time you hear about H-1B reforms. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.